My name is Alexander Alex Mitchell, and I never thought I'd fall in love with my manager. As one of Hollywood's rising stars, I was used to keeping my private life exactly that, private. But sometimes life has other plans, and mine came in the form of James Harrison. I first met James 5 years ago when I was just another struggling actor in Los Angeles. Back then, I was doing commercials and bit parts, barely making rent on my small Studio City apartment. James worked for one of the bigger talent agencies, but he wasn't handling any major clients yet. Looking back, maybe that's why we clicked. We were both hungry for success, both trying to prove ourselves. Our first meeting was supposed to be a standard 15-minute interview. It turned into a 2-hour conversation about everything from classic films to our shared love of indie music. James had this way of making you feel like you were the most interesting person in the room. His blue eyes would focus entirely on you when you spoke, and his subtle smile made you want to keep talking, just to see it widen. "You've got something special, Alex," he said as our meeting wrapped up. "Raw talent, yes, but more than that, you've got authenticity. That's rare in this town." I signed with him that day, telling myself it was purely a professional decision, that I wasn't influenced by his perfectly tailored suits or the way his dark hair fell across his forehead when he leaned forward to make a point, that I hadn't noticed how his hands moved expressively when he talked about his passion for developing new talent. The next 2 years were a whirlwind. James worked tirelessly to get me auditions, coaching me through each one, helping me refine my technique. He had an incredible eye for scripts that would showcase my strengths, and slowly but surely, the parts got bigger. A recurring role on a cable drama led to a supporting role in an indie film, which caught the attention of a major director. Through it all, James was my rock. He'd call after every audition, sometimes late at night, just to check how I was doing. We'd spend hours discussing character motivations and script analysis, often over takeout in his office, long after everyone else had gone home. "You need to trust yourself more," he'd tell me, his voice soft but firm. "Stop thinking about what other people expect and just be in the moment." I started noticing things. The way his hand would linger on my shoulder when he gave me a congratulatory pat. How his eyes would sometimes drift to my lips when we were talking close. The electricity that seemed to charge the air between us during those late-night strategy sessions. But I kept my feelings buried. In Hollywood, the relationship between an actor and their manager is sacred. Besides, I wasn't even sure if James was gay. He was intensely private about his personal life, and I'd never seen him with anyone, male or female. Everything changed at the premiere of my first major film. I was nervous as hell, pacing in my hotel room an hour before we were supposed to leave. James showed up early to make sure I was okay. He always seemed to know when I needed support. "You're going to be amazing," he said, adjusting my bow tie. His fingers brushed against my neck, and I couldn't suppress the shiver that ran through me. He must have felt me tremble because his hands stilled, but he didn't move away. Our eyes met in the mirror, and for a moment, neither of us breathed. The air felt thick with unspoken words. "James," I whispered, not even sure what I wanted to say. He stepped back abruptly, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "We should get going. The car's waiting." The premiere was a blur of flashing cameras and interviews. I kept searching for James in the crowd, finding him always watching from the sidelines, his expression unreadable. At the after-party, I was surrounded by well-wishers and industry people, but I felt oddly disconnected from it all. It wasn't until much later, when most of the guests had left, that James found me on the hotel rooftop bar. I was nursing a whiskey, trying to process the surreal nature of the evening. "You did brilliantly tonight," he said, joining me at the railing. The Los Angeles lights sparkled below us, a sea of possibilities. "Thanks to you," I replied, turning to look at him. The midnight air had loosened his tie and ruffled his hair, making him look younger, more vulnerable. "No, Alex, that was all you. He paused, taking a deep breath. "I just helped you believe in yourself. Maybe it was the whiskey, or the emotional high of the premiere, or simply that I couldn't hold back anymore." "You did more than that," I said softly. "You changed my life." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something crack in his professional facade. "Alex, we can't." he started, but his voice was rough with emotion. Why not? I stepped closer, close enough to see the internal struggle in his eyes. Because you're my manager? Because it might complicate things? Because I can't risk ruining your career, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Everything you've worked for, my career isn't worth denying how I feel about you. The words came out before I could stop them, hanging in the space between us. James closed his eyes, his hands gripping the railing so tight his knuckles turned white. How long? He asked. Since that first meeting, I admitted. Though I tried not to admit it to myself, he let out a shaky breath. God, Alex. And then his hand was on my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone with a gentleness that made my heart ache. Do you have any idea how hard it's been? Watching you, working with you every day, wanting... I didn't let him finish. I kissed him, right there on the rooftop, with the city lights as our witnesses. His lips were soft, hesitant at first, but then he was kissing me back with an intensity that made my knees weak. His hands slid into my hair, messing up the careful styling from earlier, and I couldn't have cared less. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing heavily. James rested his forehead against mine, his eyes closed. We'll have to be careful, he murmured. The industry, they're not as progressive as they pretend to be. I know, I said, my hands still gripping his jacket. But I'm tired of pretending, aren't you? He opened his eyes, and the vulnerability I saw there took my breath away. Terrified, he admitted. Not of being with you, but of messing this up. Your career is just taking off. My career isn't going anywhere, I assured him. If anything, having you by my side will make me stronger. That night changed everything. We agreed to keep our relationship private, but behind closed doors, we began exploring this new dimension to our connection. James was as meticulous in romance as he was in business, planning secret dates with the same attention to detail he gave to contract negotiations. Our first real date was at his house in the Hollywood Hills, a modern glass and steel structure that somehow managed to feel warm and inviting. He cooked dinner, an impressive pasta dish that he claimed was his grandmother's recipe. I didn't know you could cook, I said, watching him move confidently around the kitchen. He smiled. That private smile I was beginning to realize was just for me. There's a lot you don't know about me yet, Alex. We ate on his terrace, the city spread out below us like a carpet of stars. James had opened a bottle of expensive red wine, and as the evening wore on, we both relaxed into this new dynamic between us. Tell me something you've never told anyone else, I said, curled up beside him on the outdoor sofa. He was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. I almost quit the industry 3 years ago, he finally said. I was tired of the politics, the fakeness of it all, and then I met you. What made you stay? You walked into my office, and suddenly I remembered why I loved this job. The chance to help shape someone's career, to watch them grow into their potential. He kissed my temple softly. Little did I know I was falling in love in the process. The word love hung in the air between us, neither of us having used it before. I turned to face him, heart pounding. James, you don't have to say anything, he said quickly. I know it's early. I silenced him with a kiss. I love you too, I whispered against his lips. The next few months were a delicate balance of public and private lives. During the day, we maintained our professional relationship. James, the dedicated manager, me, the focused actor. But our nights belonged to us. We had to be careful, of course. Hollywood thrived on gossip, and any hint of our relationship could become tabloid fodder. We developed a system of subtle signals and coded messages. A straightened tie meant, I miss you. A casual touch to the wrist translated to, I love you. Our private moments became more precious for their rarity. The challenges came in unexpected ways. Awards season approached, and with it, increased scrutiny. My latest film was generating buzz, and suddenly I was everywhere. Talk shows, magazines, red carpet events. James was always there, but we had to maintain our distance in public. One night, after a particularly grueling press event, we retreated to my apartment. I had just finished an interview where the reporter had pressed me about my dating life, and the strain of deflecting questions was wearing on me. I hate this, I admitted, loosening my tie. Having to pretend you're just my manager. Watching you stand in the background while I walk the red carpet alone, James pulled me into his arms, his touch grounding me. I know, love, but this is how we protect what we have. The moment the public knows, everything changes. Maybe it's time for a change, I suggested, looking up at him. Not a public announcement, but maybe we could be less careful around our close friends? He considered this, his fingers absently running through my hair. Who did you have in mind? We decided to start with my best friend and co-star, Sarah Bennett. She'd been suspicious for months anyway, always giving us knowing looks when James and I would have our business dinners. We invited her over to James's house for dinner. Her reaction to our news was exactly what we needed, pure joy followed by an "I knew it" that made us all laugh. Having someone else know made everything feel more real, less like we were living in a beautiful but isolated bubble. But our moment of peace was short-lived. A week later, James called me into his office, his face tight with concern. He closed the door and pulled up a gossip website on his computer. There was a grainy photo of us on his terrace, clearly taken with a long-lens camera from somewhere in the hills. The headline read, "Rising Star's Secret Meetings with Manager. More than business?" "It's not conclusive," James said, his voice carefully controlled. "We can say it was a business meeting. But we need to be more careful," I finished, feeling my stomach twist. The next few weeks were tense. We scaled back our time together, communicating mostly through phone calls and texts. Every public interaction was carefully choreographed, professional to a fault. I missed him desperately, missed the casual intimacy we'd started to take for granted. The breaking point came during the Golden Globes. I was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and James had worked tirelessly to manage my campaign. The night of the ceremony, I won. In the euphoria of the moment, I almost thanked him in my speech. Not as my manager, but as the man I loved. I caught myself just in time, but the look we shared across the crowded room said everything we couldn't. Later that night, in the privacy of his car, he held me close. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "So incredibly proud." "I wanted to tell everyone," I admitted. "When I was up there, I wanted to say that none of this would mean anything without you. Not just as my manager, but as—" "I know," he said softly. "I know." That night marked a turning point. We were both tired of hiding, tired of the constant vigilance. Over the next few days, we had several long conversations about our future. "What if," James said one evening, as we sat in his living room reviewing scripts, "what if we didn't hide anymore?" I looked up from the manuscript in my hands. "Are you serious?" He set aside his laptop and turned to face me fully. "I've been thinking about it a lot. Your career is established now. You're respected for your work, not just your image. And maybe it's time for both of us to live authentically." I studied his face, seeing both determination and vulnerability there. "What about your career? Won't this affect your other clients?" He smiled softly. "I've built my reputation on integrity and results. If some clients can't handle who I am, then maybe they're not the right clients for me." We spent the next month planning carefully. We consulted with PR specialists, spoke with my agent, who, as it turned out, had suspected all along, and prepared for every possible scenario. Sarah helped us craft a strategy that would let us control the narrative. The opportunity came with my next big film premiere. Instead of arriving separately as we usually did, James and I decided to walk the red carpet together. Not with any grand announcement, but simply as two people who were done hiding. The night of the premiere, I was more nervous than I'd ever been for any audition or performance. James squeezed my hand in the car. "We don't have to do this," he said quietly. "We can wait." I brought his hand to my lips. "No more waiting. I want everyone to know that you're not just the man behind my success. You're the man I love." The cameras started flashing the moment we stepped out of the car. We walked the red carpet as we'd planned, professional, but not hiding the natural intimacy between us. When an entertainment reporter asked about our relationship, I simply smiled and said, "James is more than my manager. He's my partner in every sense of the word." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Social media exploded, news outlets ran the story, and our phones wouldn't stop buzzing. But among the chaos, something beautiful happened. Messages started pouring in from young actors and industry professionals who said our courage gave them hope. The following weeks were intense. There were interviews to navigate, questions to answer, and some negative reactions to deal with. But standing together made it all manageable. James proved to be as skilled at handling our relationship's public face as he was at managing my career. One particularly touching moment came during an interview with a respected film magazine. The interviewer asked how we managed to maintain both professional and personal relationships. "It's about respect," James answered. "Respect for each other's work, dreams, and boundaries. Alex isn't just my client or my partner, he's my inspiration. Watching him grow as an actor, seeing his dedication to his craft, it makes me want to be better at what I do too." I reached for his hand then, not caring that we were on record. And James gives me the strength to be authentic, both in my work and in my life. He taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. A year after we went public, I was nominated for an Academy Award. The night before the ceremony, James and I sat on his terrace, the same spot where that paparazzi photo had been taken that once caused us so much anxiety. "Remember when we thought this would ruin everything?" I asked, leaning into his embrace. He chuckled, pressing a kiss to my temple. "Instead, it made everything better. Though I still maintain that your talent would have gotten you here regardless." "Maybe," I conceded, "but I wouldn't have wanted to be here without you by my side." The Oscar ceremony was surreal. Walking the red carpet with James openly, proudly, felt like a victory in itself. When they called my name as the winner, the first thing I saw was James's face, beaming with pride and love. "I want to thank someone special," I said during my acceptance speech, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. "James Harrison, my manager, my partner, my heart. You taught me that success means nothing if you can't be true to yourself. This award is as much yours as it is mine." The applause that followed was thunderous, but all I could see was James, wiping tears from his eyes, in the audience. Later that night, at the governor's ball, several young actors approached us. They shared their own stories of hiding, of fear, of wanting to be authentic but worried about their careers. James listened to each one with the same attention he'd given me in that first meeting years ago. "You've changed things," one of them said. "You've shown that it's possible to be out and successful in this industry." Looking at James that night, I realized how far we'd come from those early days of secret meetings and careful distances. Our relationship had evolved into something stronger than I could have imagined, a partnership built on trust, respect, and unwavering support. 2 months after the Oscars, James proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture, just us, in his kitchen on a Sunday morning, making breakfast. He was wearing old sweatpants and my borrowed t-shirt, his hair adorably mussed from sleep. "Marry me," he said simply, holding out a coffee mug, "because I want every morning to be like this." We got married in a private ceremony in his backyard, with only our closest friends and family present. Sarah was my best person, and she cried more than both of us combined. Our vows were simple but profound, promises to support each other's dreams, to face challenges together, and to never hide our love again. Today, James still manages my career, but we've found a beautiful balance between our professional and personal lives. We've started a foundation to support LGBTQ+ artists in the entertainment industry, turning our experience into something that can help others. Sometimes, when we're reviewing scripts together or planning career moves, I catch myself watching him. The way his brow furrows in concentration, how his eyes light up when he gets excited about a project. In these moments, I'm transported back to that first meeting in his office, when I was just another aspiring actor, and he was just another manager. Life has a funny way of giving you exactly what you need, even when you don't know you're looking for it. I went into James's office looking for a manager and found the love of my life. Together, we didn't just build a career. We built a life, a partnership, and maybe in our own small way, help make the industry a little more accepting. As I write this, James is in the other room, probably fighting with the coffee maker. Some things never change. We have a script reading later, followed by dinner with Sarah. It's a normal day in our not-so-normal life, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Because sometimes, the greatest roles we play aren't on screen. They're the ones we play in real life, when we choose to be brave enough to love openly and live authentically.